Yo, welcome back and welcome to the Week 3 DFS early look on the DFS Deep Dive podcast. I'm Graham, joined as I am always with Jake Tribby as we go through the Week 3 early look.
What?
Why are you shaking your head? You're welcome.
Dude, much better scoring week. We were talking last week about how week 1 always sucks and it's always super low scoring. Week 2s are usually a lot better, and that was especially the case this past week. The games averaged over 50 points if you take away the snooze fest on Sunday night last night against Falcons and Vikings. Every game basically smashed, like went over the total or got very close. We had some just huge performances. It was nice to have actual fantasy points to count this past week, Jake.
Yeah, it really was. It made watching the games a lot more exciting. It made sweating the games a lot more exciting, and overall, it made it seem a lot more like football is truly back. You know, like you said, last week was a bit of a snooze fest. I wasn't sure if week 2 would be too different, but we knew. I mean, 10 minutes into the slate, we already had 5-6 touchdowns, and a lot of teams were running hot. It was a really fun day of games.
Yes, it was. Obviously, we got to start at the top, recapping the week just a little bit. Goff doubles, Lions just absolutely crushed the Bears. Jahmyr Gibbs was fine. Scored, just 19, 20 DK. But really, it was the passing game. Goff, Amon-Ra, J-Mo just wrecking the slate. Russell Wilson and Jared Goff doubles basically won every tournament on DraftKings this past week. Goff is a favorite it's a real thing, man. Like when he's a dog, you just fade him when he's at home, especially when he's at home. But when he's favored, Goff is he's got an underrated ceiling. And last week it really hit 5, 6, 7% ownership across DraftKings. I was just telling you before the show, I loved Amon-Ra. I should have played a little bit more of him, but Goff really never entered my player pool. And I think that was just bad process on my part because I did like the Lions, did love Rome Odunze on the other side. Full stacks, just absolutely crushed. Any thoughts on the Lions? I mean, I think everybody was just a little concerned about Goff in this passing game after week 1 with no Ben Johnson, but I think that was more so just that matchup. I think everybody is going to kind of suck against Green Bay this season.
Yeah. I mean, I'm right there with you. And I think, generally speaking, it's often a pretty big leak by the field if the team with the single highest implied team total on the slate is going to be totally unowned. And that was what we saw with the Lions. You mentioned that Goff ownership, and the 555 milli, Goff was 2.5% owned, J-Mo 3%, Amon-Ra St. Brown a little over 5%. So Gibbs was really the only guy on Detroit that picked up any ownership. And, obviously that play made sense, but hats off to Scott Barrett for really pumping that play up on cashing points. I thought that was a really sharp angle. And yeah, just rare to see a game that's that enticing from DFS from the market perspective. And, players are just totally off of it.
Yeah, that's the process I was talking about. It's just that game had plenty of avenues to just absolutely go off. Games in Detroit are typically high scoring anyway. And yeah, Goff, he was 3% in the big milli, Amon-Ra 6%. Just absolutely crushing. How about Russell Wilson turning back the clocks, man? Sub 1% goes off for 34.3 DK as the winning stack by over 20 DK points in the big milli, the $20 milli. It was a Neighbors, Wandale, Russ Wilson double. Loved Neighbors in the spot. It was hard not to, but yeah, I was not thinking of Russ at all. I thought he had legitimate in-game bench risk, but it seems like Jake, he's earned himself at least one more week of no Jackson Dart.
Yeah, it really does seem that way. It was kind of funny, earlier last week, me and Scott were going back and forth on whether or not Neighbors or Wandale was the right play. It ended up being both of them with Russell Wilson, which is
Crazy.
Pretty wild. I also think it shows how exploitable this Dallas Cowboys defense is. I mean, if Russell Wilson can push for over 400 yards against you, that's a defense we're going to want to target week after week. And I know we have a few plays that we were going to talk about against Dallas again.
That was my main takeaway. That was exactly what I was going to say. They get Dallas plays Chicago in Chicago this past week. So I know it's not been fun, not been pretty for Bears fans. It's not been fun to watch Caleb Williams, that's for sure. But yeah, that game is going to be probably the most popular on the slate for that main reason. One final takeaway I had: Drake May finally hit a big ceiling on DraftKings, but unfortunately none of his pass catchers did. Jake, that was kind of a weird game, right? Like obviously there was 2 returns for touchdowns, a few sloppy plays by Miami once again, but it felt like May played really well, but none of his receivers got there. Kayshon Boutte basically just had the one target in the end zone. Hunter Henry, Stephon Diggs, none of these guys really did anything. This is my concern, at least for DFS. Like, we love Drake May as a site this year, and I think we're gonna be all right on that. But yeah, my concern with DFS is like I still kind of feel the same way. There's really no one to stack him with.
Yeah, that's the tough thing is, I think Kayshon Boutte and Hunter Henry are going to work their way into Drake May stacks here and there. But, something Brett Whitefield pointed out last week is that Drake May sort of looks like early career Josh Allen, and not necessarily in a good way. And that's going to lead to some very, very volatile passing performances. But at least we have the rushing work to hang our hats on. 10 carries last week, which was pretty much exactly what we were hoping for coming in to this season. They still aren't designing him many runs, but as long as he can take advantage with his legs, Drake May's always going to be in play for fantasy.
No doubt about it. All right, we'll get started, man, with the week 3 early look, looking ahead at week 3. This is the earliest look available going into DFS contests this coming week. We'll get it started with quarterbacks, going through the main slate. There are a ton of value quarterbacks this week. I think the chalk build, it's only Monday, we're recording this early, but the chalk build this week is certainly going to be paying down at quarterback and trying to get up at running back once again. But this is just like it's just loaded, dude. We've got some news right before the show. At the top, 5,900 for Dak Prescott it's going to be, I don't think it's going to be as highly owned as it would have been. And, we'll get to some of these lower end plays, but 5,900 gets the Bears. We were just talking about how that game is going to be awesome. 49.5 total. It is the highest on the main slate by quite a margin, Jake. And Prescott, Lamb, Pickens, it's just so easy to stack. I'm going to be on Dak this week for sure.
Yeah. This is just another great spot to play Dak. He just scored 26.1 DraftKings points, and his price didn't change. If you exclude last week, 5,900, that's the cheapest price point for Dak Prescott since week 13 of 2019. So it's been about 6 years since we've had the opportunity to play Dak in this price range. And like you said, the game environment is fantastic. Chicago just gave up 52 points to Detroit. The Cowboys just got absolutely shredded by the Giants. It's very, very easy to see these teams just trading big plays, and obviously that's fantastic for DFS.
Yeah, Dak looked fantastic week 1 against the Eagles. The box score just wasn't there. Once again, played a great game against the Giants. And then, I kind of imagined the Bears being like a middle of the road defense, like okay, but no Jalen Johnson. Kyler Gordon, their slot corner, is still injured. And we just saw last week Amon-Ra lost his mind against Bears backup slot corners. Lamb is up to 8K. It's the right price for him, but Pickens is certainly going to project as a pretty strong value, I'd imagine, for us at 5,900 on DK this week. So I'm with you on Dak. We'll stick on that same side of the game, man. It's not been pretty for Caleb Williams. He's going to run around and, kind of do his Caleb Williams thing where he, scrambles, and it does lead to fantasy points. This is kind of a litmus test game for him because the Cowboys defense has just gotten absolutely smoked. Jake, he's 5,600. He's super easy to stack because we're going to love Rome Odunze once again here at Fantasy Points. 5,600, huge game total. Imagine, this game's going to be very much up in pace. Cowboys have been, pretty up in pace, pretty pass heavy so far. Yeah, I'm gonna hold my nose and probably play some Caleb Williams this week too.
Yeah. This is just a great spot to play Caleb Williams. Like you said, the game environment's fantastic. Like we've already said multiple times, Cowboys defense got absolutely shredded by Russell Wilson. And, Caleb, despite obvious, film struggles, he's been still pretty good for fantasy. He's the quarterback 6 among main slate quarterbacks by DraftKings fantasy points per game. And, we've seen some struggles in both Ben Johnson's offense and Liam Cohen's offense, both very creative play callers. But, in both cases, I expect the quarterbacks to progress as the season moves along. And Caleb Williams is obviously no exception. And this would be a great game for it against a very, very soft Cowboys defense.
Yeah, they play a ton of zone, so you're not going to get as much man coverage as Williams did this past week. Obviously, quarterbacks scramble a little bit more against man because the corners have their backs turned in coverage. But still, 27 yards, 5 carries. He had 58 yards, touchdown on 6 carries in week one. There's certainly a little bit of it's gross, but there's some definite Konami upside with him. Daniel Jones is 5,400 still. I have no idea why DraftKings has not moved his price. Jake, I mean, this is it was a pretty decent game environment. Him coming out and actually, just absolutely smoking the Broncos was pretty impressive to me. I consider the Broncos to be, if not the best defense, like the top 3 defense in the NFL at least. This week he goes on the road against Tennessee, but this price, again, it's just a really nice week to pay down at quarterback. This price is great for DJ. How are we feeling this week?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard not to feel good when Daniel Jones has averaged 27.7 DraftKings fantasy points per game through 2 weeks, still only 5,400, as you pointed out. We're recording this on Monday. No quarterback with multiple games is remotely close on the main slate in terms of fantasy points per game to Daniel Jones. And I think the other thing that really, really stands out about Daniel Jones and stacking him up this week is that every single pass catcher in this game on both sides is 5,100 on DraftKings or cheaper. So this is an extremely easy game to stack up. Really don't have to use too much salary. And we've already seen, great play from Daniel Jones, both, on film and in the fantasy box score.
Yeah, only 4 quarterbacks over the last 2 seasons have thrown for over 270 yards against the Broncos. It was Lamar Jackson, obviously MVP Lamar. Jameis Winston did it. He threw for 497 against the Broncos, Jake, that last year, but he needed 58 pass attempts to get there. Joe Burrow also had a big game, 412 passing yards, week 17, but he needed 49 pass attempts. So Daniel Jones goes for 316. Yeah, I mean, huge bull indicator that he just goes off, obviously at home, but goes off against a really good defense. Definitely going to be in on Daniel Jones, and like you mentioned, Tyler Warren, Michael Pittman gets a much better matchup this week. It's a really, really nice spot for sure. Jake, there are 2 4K stone minimum quarterbacks this week. We've gotten some unfortunate injury news. Seems like Jaden Daniels is set to miss at least one game. He's got a knee injury, sprained his knee on Thursday night this past week. Mariota is 4K. JJ McCarthy is also going to miss this next coming game. He has a high ankle injury. It seems like he might miss multiple weeks. Both Carson Wentz, Marcus Mariota are 4,000 this week on DraftKings. Wentz, are we interested?
I mean, it's hard not to have a little interest in any starting quarterback at 4K.
Sure,
Carson
right.
Wentz has, certainly shown us enough, I think. And really, this is a lot like Mac Jones last week, where say what you will about Wentz, but the offensive environment is, just downright awesome. Vikings head coach Kevin O'Connell's teams have ranked top 6 in pass rate over expectation and top 5 in red zone pass rate in every season since he took the job. We saw Joshua Dobbs average 19.9 fantasy points per game across his 4 full starts with Kevin O'Connell. Nick Mullins, 17.9 fantasy points per game. So, I mean, at 4K, if he can get anywhere close to Joshua Dobbs, Nick Mullins level of production, we're going to feel really, really good about Carson Wentz. And this is also a solid game environment and a solid matchup against another terrible defense in Cincinnati.
Yeah, the game total is down to 41.5, man. It's a bit of a bummer because, I mean, if we got Burrow and McCarthy, it'd be just a terrific game, probably right there with Cowboys Bears in terms of the total.
Yeah.
That's my one pushback. Like, yeah, he's in play. But this total kind of stinks, and I could definitely see this game being a bit of a slap fest. Vikings offensive line was really bad against the Falcons. They gave up a 50+% pressure rate. McCarthy was getting pressured very quickly. We'll see if Christian Darrisaw comes back for the Vikings, but yeah, I'm with you. I think the quarterback I'm more excited to play at 4K is Marcus Mariota. Basically across 6 quarters of work last year, went 33 of 41, 366 yards, had 4 touchdowns, also added 90 yards and a score on the ground on 16 carries. Against I think an equally bad Raiders defense, Jake. Their secondary is not good. Max Crosby got a ton of respect for Mad Max, but yeah, this is a terrible secondary. Washington has gone from, I believe, 6-point favorites. It's now down to 2.5. It's a better game total as well, 43.5 on the early look ahead lines. Mariota is easy to stack too. I think you just play Debo, play McLaurin. He's kind of come down in price as well. And Raiders side, you can bring it back with Jancy. Hopefully Brock Bowers is healthy. This game has some like gross sneaky upside because both defenses have been pretty bad. Commanders just got absolutely ran circles around by Matt LaFleur and the Packers last week. I like some Mariota here. He's played pretty well with Cliff and these small sample, but he's played pretty well.
Yeah, he absolutely has. And, like I said earlier, pretty much any quarterback is in play at 4K, but especially a guy who has, some of the rushing upside that Marcus Mariota has. Like you said, he's had some success in this offense previously. This feels like a really good spot for Mariota, and he would certainly be my preference there. I also wanted to throw out another backup quarterback who actually was successfully priced up because we had the injury info yesterday, Jake Browning. On the other side of this Carson Wentz game. Like you said, the total's quite gross, but Jake Browning in 7 starts last year averaged 20.7 fantasy points per game. And at 5,500, that's pretty reasonable. Just overall, I think this is one of the most interesting quarterback slates we've seen in a long time, especially under 6K. We're going to have a lot of very interesting decisions to make.
Definitely, no doubt about it. Browning 5,500. Mac Jones also kind of got priced up. He was min last week. It seems like Brock Purdy's probably going to miss another game. I think Mac is in play, but I'm more interested in honestly just paying down for Wentz. I definitely am with you on Mariota as well. Justin Fields, one more name to throw out. He's 5,300. He came down in price. I believe he was 56 or 50. Yeah, he was 5,700 this past week. Obviously, the Jets just got completely debacled by the Bills. But if he's good to go off the concussion, I think Fields is also in play. And then Drake May is 5,300. I mean, there's literally like 8 or 9 quarterbacks sub 6K starting with Dak. And it's going to kind of keep ownership off of all of them, which is really, really nice. So fun layout at quarterback and for stacking this coming week for week 3. Jake, let's get through these running backs here, man. Like I said, everybody's going to be wanting to pay up this week with everybody's going to be wanting to paying up at running back with quarterbacks being so cheap. Christian McCaffrey's finally priced correctly at 8,200. We'll see if we get Brock Purdy, but I still think this price is probably a little too cheap for McCaffrey, who should probably be like 9K at this point. We're probably still getting a pretty decent discount here, right?
Yeah, we are. I mean, this is a 9K player, maybe more than that. I mean, 24.1 expected fantasy points per game through 2 weeks. Over a full season, that would easily be the best workload in fantasy points data history. That would put 2021 Derrick Henry to shame. Also, a 23% target share through 2 weeks is obviously insane for any running back. That's more than Tyreek Hill, AJ Brown, and DK Metcalf. So there's incredible receiving upside here as long as these 49ers pass catchers remain beat up. Obviously, don't expect Kittle back this week. Don't expect Brandon Ayuk back this week. It's pretty much going to be the CMC, Ricky Pearsall, and Juwan Jennings show once again.
No doubt. And, like you said, I mean, McCaffrey getting this just massive workload, 30 plus XFP, just crazy good. I thought Kyler Murray has played a lot better, so this will be a really fun game. Mac Jones played all right, man. He definitely played all right, but yeah, 8,200 for McCaffrey is nice. One more I'm going to throw out just at the top, and we'll get to some of these value running backs. 7,200 for Jonathan Taylor looks like a screaming value to me. He is top 5 in XFP per game to start this season. We've finally seen a little bit of uptick in the passing game usage. Nothing crazy. He's got 2 and 3 targets through a couple of games, but just having a competent offense with Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones is going to get some ownership this week, Jake, for sure. Jonathan Taylor is going to be one of the highest owned running backs on the slate. 7,200 is just really, really nice for him. Going down the board a little bit, Javonte Williams is 6,100, and I'm just going to fully admit it. I did not see this for Javonte Williams, so I'm just going to take the L here. Huge bell cow workload. Scored 20 DK points in week 1 on Thursday night. Just came back and scored 25 attached to Dak, and he's running well. I mean, Giants run defense I don't think is anything special, but dude, this workload is ridiculously good. I mean, Jaden Blue hasn't played so far. The rookie, Miles Sanders, got a vulture goal line touchdown, but he's barely playing as well. It's Javonte's backfield, man. And Man, just 6,100. He's only come up 300 in price.
Yeah. We're going to want to play, as many Cowboys as possible this week. Obviously, Javante's no exception. 75% snap share, 17.2 expected fantasy points per game, and 24.2 DraftKings fantasy points per game. Across all running backs over the full season, those numbers rank 12th, 7th, and 4th best. I think what's also really impressive about Javonte is, if you told me he earned a bell cow workload a few weeks ago to start the season, I would have said, oh, okay, he's probably at 16, 17 expected fantasy points per game, but only 13 or 14 actual fantasy points per game. No, he's been crushing his expectation. Like you said, he's looked pretty good doing it. And obviously, this is a fantastic game environment against a Bears defense that's allowed 148 rushing yards per game and 5.3 yards per carry. Really, really strong setup this week for Javonte Williams. I'd imagine he ends up as one of the 3 to 5 most popular running backs on the week.
Yeah, I think that's the right call. I mean, the 6K range, there's just a lot of question marks. I mean, Breece Hall is 6K. You got the question marks after the Jets just got smoked. Chuba Hubbard, 6,200. He's losing some work to Rico Dowdle, and the Panthers just lost 2 of their offensive linemen. Obviously, Kamara, 6,300 is a decent price, but it's the Saints offense going on the road in Seattle. So I'm with you. I think Javonte kind of stands out in that price range for sure. One more running back we want to talk through. Austin Eckler, unfortunately, was just lost for the season. He popped his Achilles. Jake, how do we think this Washington backfield shakes out? Right now, it's just Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, Jeremy McNichols, and Chris Rodriguez. Obviously, Rodriguez has not played this season. He's been a healthy scratch. McNichols can kind of take some of that Eckler role, but I don't know if it's like I've struggled with this because I don't know if we can just necessarily expect Krosky-Merritt to just play more in passing downs. This is a guy in college who, only caught a handful of passes across 5 seasons. He's basically not been asked to play on passing downs so far. But, it could just lean, especially this week with no Jayden Daniels. Cliff Kingsbury, their offensive coordinator, could certainly just lean a little more run heavy.
Yeah, that's sort of my assumption here too. And I think the other thing to keep in mind with McNichols is that he is fairly important on special teams. So I don't know how much they're going to really want to risk him on offense when they have JCM and C-Rod. And obviously we have to assume that Krosky-Merritt is ahead of C-Rod, given that, C-Rod's been inactive thus far. So, maybe we get a little bit more Debo worked in there. Mariota might decide to keep a few more of these handoffs, but I also wouldn't be surprised if the team leaned more run heavy in general with Mariota back there. If you don't have to force them to throw, and right now the spread doesn't necessarily suggest they will, they're still favored in this game. Why not lean on your running backs in this game? And obviously the price for JCM is really, really strong. It'll be interesting to see how projections shake out across the week and if he really ends up popping as a value.
Yeah, the floor I think is a little low for him because for all the reasons we just lined up with the receiving workload. But yeah, I mean, he could take 14, 15 carries this week for sure. 5,400 is an awesome price. All right, we'll keep it moving to receiver. Jake, we've been talking about this Cowboys-Bears game all podcast long. CeeDee Lamb's 8K, certainly a fair price for him. Better play than Jamar Chase this week, with Chase not having Burrow, obviously. But George Pickens is just 5,900. We got the ceiling, man. We obviously, it took a kind of a shootout game script against the Giants this past week to get there. But Pickens, 17.8 DK points, got the 9 targets. Very nice bounce back game for him. I think everybody's going to be wanting to play Cowboys, like you've been saying.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. CD ranks behind only Malik Neighbors in wide receiver usage through 2 weeks. Like we said, that's already largely reflected in his price. But still, George Pickens at 5,900, given what we've seen from him as a downfield and an end zone threat, I think is fantastic against a Bears secondary that's been a disaster this year. Now they won't have Jalen Johnson for the foreseeable future. So this spot really could not line up any better for the Cowboys passing attack.
Yeah, and for Pickens specifically, I mean, Jamison Williams was held out of the box score until Jalen Johnson got hurt this past week. Jalen Johnson gets hurt, he leaves the game, and then J-Mo immediately rips a 60 and 40-yard big explosive plays, gets there on just a couple of targets. Pickens obviously is, not a Jamison Williams type speed, but he, wins downfield, very similar depth of targets. Yeah, Pickens is probably going to be one of my favorite plays, if not my favorite play this coming week. Eagles' pass offense has been a disaster so far, man. It's not been pretty. And I want to go back and rewatch the game from yesterday. Jalen Hurts just didn't really have to do all that much. I mean, again, this has kind of been the story for the Eagles the last 2 years. They just are, building these leads in the second half, not having to do anything. 23 pass attempts week 1, 22 against the Chiefs this past week. Jake, did they finally get pushed? Did the Rams finally push them? And if so, can we play A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith?
Yeah, I think that's the big question here. The spread is only 3.5, which
Right.
definitely suggests that the Rams have a chance to push Philadelphia in this game. We haven't gotten the game scripts that we've wanted, and obviously A.J. Brown after week 1 was complaining about facing a ton of zone. But I think it's important to remember that, A.J. Brown is a guy who can break any slate, and he's only 6,300. That's his cheapest price tag since week 7 of 2020, back when he was on the Titans. The Rams haven't necessarily been an easy matchup for opposing wide receivers, but a guy this good at a historically low price is always very interesting to me for tournaments. I don't think we're going to get anywhere near AJ Brown in cash, but especially for larger field stuff, $6,300 AJ Brown is very, very intriguing.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I'm also in on Devonta Smith at 5,300. His price has come down. Dallas Goedert is dealing with a knee injury, and what we've seen in the past is just, and we saw it yesterday. Again, Eagles just didn't have to throw that much. They just consolidate around these two. We'll see on Dallas Goedert later this week, but if he's out again, yeah, 5,300 for Devonta Smith will be certainly in my player pool. Jake, the Steelers and the Patriots this coming week kind of could be one of these games where on paper, we thought these defenses would be pretty good coming into the season, but it has not been the case so far. We'll see if the Patriots get Christian Gonzalez this coming week. He's been out with a hamstring injury, but 5,700 for DK Metcalf is looking like a great price. Aaron Rodgers is, he's kind of immobile back there, but he's still playing all right. Like, there was a pick that was dropped yesterday that was pretty brutal decision on Rodgers' part at least. But other than that, I mean, I think he's been all right through 2 games. Metcalf 5,700 certainly pops to you, I think.
Yeah. I mean, I think the big thing here is the matchup. No team's given up more passing yards per game than New England at 339 yards per game. And, we know Metcalf is the leading wide receiver here in Pittsburgh. Obviously, the underlying metrics haven't been particularly great. Only a 4.9 average depth of target, 20% target share, 12.1 expected fantasy points per game. But if there was ever a get right spot for Metcalf, it's going to be here against New England. One of the problems with playing anybody on Pittsburgh is you're never going to get, super high total, great projected pace or anything like that. But I wouldn't be surprised if this was a game where Metcalf popped for a 30% target share and was able to rip off a couple long touchdowns.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And if we do get Gonzalez back, they'll probably play some more man coverage, and that is huge for Metcalf. He has just massive splits in his career. Just a monster against man coverage. It's not like he's bad against zone, but he's just that much better against man coverage. Jake, Roma Dunze, what are we doing with this price, dude? 5,300. We were on him this past week at 4,800. 5,300 is just way too cheap. I think he's going to be a mid 6K receiver by mid-season. I just think he's better than DJ Moore. I think he's a more well-rounded receiver, and we've seen that so far in the usage. I mean, his first read target share is way up. He's just crushing in that regard, crushing in volume, 9, 11 targets. And I think the big thing that kind of brought me into Odunze this coming year, this season, was mainly just like no Keenan Allen. He's going to play way more in 2 wide receiver sets. Like, there's not going to play Olamide Zaccheaus over this guy, and that has certainly been the case. Just hit a huge ceiling game, 7, 128, and 2. And yeah, we only get a $500 increase on DK. 5,300 is just way too cheap.
Yeah, it is. I mean, if Rome Odunze was 6,400, I think he'd still draw a decent bit of ownership this week. This is just such a good spot, such a good matchup with Dallas, as we've already talked about pretty extensively. And through 2 weeks, wide receiver 3 by expected fantasy points per game, wide receiver 12 by target share, wide receiver 6 by air yardage share. I mean, very, very rare to find underlying metrics like that in a $5,300 wide receiver. So I'd be pretty surprised if he wasn't, if not the highest owned wide receiver on the week, he's got to be top 3. This is just, he's going to project incredibly well.
Yeah, Odunze, 33% first read target share, just right behind CeeDee Lamb, 34%, just incredible volume. Everything's kind of turning up for Odunze to start this season. One more receiver I want to mention, Jake, is Michael Pittman at 4,900. We were just talking through Daniel Jones a second ago. Pittman's price basically hasn't changed since the open. We were fully off him this past week because of the Pat Surtain shadow. Pittman doesn't really do much. Gets 4 catches for 40 yards. Now we get a much better matchup here for Pittman. 4,900 certainly stood out to me. Jake, let's talk through these tight ends on the week 3 early look pod. Tyler Warren's price has somehow come down. I'm not sure what we're doing. He had another very strong game this past week. Jake, I told you on Monday this past week for the week 2 early look that my tight end decision had been made. I wanted Tyler Warren at 4,500. I made that decision and played him. He got there 4 for 79 on 7 targets. He had 776 and no touchdowns in week 1, but 2 just back-to-back great games, and he's cheaper now. I'm not really sure what we're doing.
Yeah. I mean, he's just a major piece of this offense. 25% target share, 14.5 expected fantasy points per game through 2 weeks. I think it's fair to say that him and Michael Pittman are sort of a 1A, 1B type situation right now in the Colts offense. And,
right.
Like we said, this is a very, very easy game to stack. You can play Daniel Jones. Every single pass catcher is 5,100 or cheaper. And Tyler Warren at a tight end 4 price tag on a 13-game slate really does jump out at the tight end position.
Yeah, I mentioned Pittman is like a strong technical value, but if I'm just picking one Colts pass catcher, it's definitely going to be Tyler Warren this week. Through 2 games, he's got a 25% first read target share, averaging 2.8 yards per route run. He just looks like an absolute monster. He is somewhere on that like Brock Bowers, Sam Laporta trajectory in terms of his just like rookie season production. And man, I mean, I would straight up just prefer him over Warren, over Downs, obviously over Pierce. And this price is just, it's kind of stupid, honestly. It's a little bit of a stupid price. I will probably just be jamming in Tyler Warren once again. One other tight end we wanted to note, looks like a pretty decent price. Juwan Johnson has just, the usage has been fantastic. He ran another huge route share this past week. I think I looked this up before last week. I mean, Johnson had like 2 games in his career where he had an 80% route share or higher. This past week, he did it again. Huge route share. Getting a legitimate, condensed targets here with the Saints. Kellen Moore's just throwing to his good players in Olave, Shaheed, and Johnson. And 3,900 is a pretty nice price on DraftKings. Full PPR. Johnson's going to be in line, it seems like, every week for like a minimum of 6 to 7 targets. And then, you get these games where the Saints trail. Like he could, certainly keep hitting the 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 targets he's been at, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, like you pointed out, the route share is finally there for Juwan Johnson, and he's always been a target earner. Tight end 4 by target share, tight end 3 by air yard share, and the tight end 1 by expected fantasy points per game. Only the tight end 8 on the main slate in a game where New Orleans is, once again going to need to throw. They're 7.5 point underdog this week. So I think we can continue to anticipate really strong volume for all of Chris Olave, Rashid Shaheed, and Juwan Johnson. And, I think Johnson has the best price of that trio and at a position that we generally like to pay down, save a little salary for some of those higher upside positions.
Yeah, this is looking like an awesome stars and scrubs week to me. Just you pay down at quarterback, you pay down at tight end, and you jam in CeeDee Lamb, McCaffrey, Jonathan Taylor on the high end. One final note, his route share, dude, it's 82%. That's 3rd best. It's only Trey McBride and Kyle Pitts. Kyle Pitts getting a full-time route share, 8,600 or 86%. I think Pitts is kind of in play at 3,900, to be honest. I've not said this about Kyle Pitts, Jake, in 3 years. This is famous last words. I have literally just kind of forgotten about him. But 3,900 is an okay price for sure. I just have concerns about that Panthers-Falcons game, man. Falcons have been very conservative in terms of their play calling, run heavy, and the Panthers just lost 2 of their best offensive linemen. And they Bryce Young had a nice bounce back in that second half, but he was really bad in the first half against the Cardinals. That's the first time I've said Kyle Pitts is in play in a long time, and it made me feel gross, but man, the usage has not been bad for him thus far. Jake, great stuff, man. As always, we will be back on Fridays for Cashing Points, myself, Jake, and Ryan Heath. Make sure you're checking us out at 7 p.m. on the Fantasy Points YouTube channel. If you're subscribed to the DFS Deep Dive podcast, that is also going up shortly after. If you've not subscribed to Fantasy Points, I'm not sure what you're doing right now. We're running a 15% off promo. Make sure you're getting in. This 15% off promo will work for any of our offerings: NFL Standard Premium, DFS Optimizer, the Data Suite, all in. It's code BETSMART. Get yourself 15% off any subscription at fantasypoints.com. For Jake, I'm Graham. This was the Week 3 DFS early look. Good luck in your contest this week.